Cross your fingers, knock on wood, hit your knees, whatever your mode of ensuring goodness and blessing to SEC football this weekend. As of right now, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, we have no cancellations in the SEC this weekend. All 14 teams will be in play, and we are going to spotlight those games coming up here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, and our weekly SEC show on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We've got Jackie Franchuli standing by from All Gators, SI, Jake Evans from the Rebel Walk to talk Ole Miss football, Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football to talk Kentucky. And, of course, we'll take your calls as well right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, 860-325-3687. Let's look at the SEC schedule, but first of all, I'll let you know that we're at Patreon. So one of the ways you can help support us is join us on Patreon. It's only 16 cents per day. That's 16 cents per day. You get my predictions. You get an insider look at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. You also get the Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info lock of the week. And you get our watch parties and our exclusive live stream that we deliver each week per request. Each week per request. So some of your patrons are saying, where are those exclusive live streams? Well, there's a ton of them on there if you look per request. So again, join us on Patreon. Help us build the voice of college football community on Patreon. Amazon. Christmas is coming, folks. I don't want to try to count the days, but I would guess that it's about, it's only about 23, right? 25 minus 2 would be 23. So shop Amazon, shop Christmas, and use the link in the description section of any of the videos to help us build the channel. We got Jackie Franchuli on the line from All Gators on the SI platform for Florida football. Jackie, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for joining us, as always. Let's look at, first of all, we're just celebrating right now that all 14 teams in all 7 games are intact. Whether you need to cross your fingers, hit your knees, knock on wood, whatever you need to do to keep all these games together between Wednesday night and Saturday. But for right now, we're in good shape. In Florida taking on Tennessee. After hearing from the players and from Dan Mullen this week, what stood out to you about their thoughts about the Tennessee Vols?
Yeah, I think Florida right now is just focused on, I know it's a cliche, but they are focused on themselves right now. Obviously, there's a lot of questions on certain parts of their defense. I think that's what their main priority is right now. Obviously, we saw it in the last game how quickly can things turn against them on the defensive side of the ball, and they kind of did a lot of adjustments in the second half last time, which allowed that defense to play better. And I think that's something where Dan Mullen is trying to really hone down. Everyone's talking about that big fight between Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham on the sidelines last weekend, and I think that's something where that's something that we're going to be talking about going towards the postseason here, because honestly, I know we're not going to brush aside Tennessee, but as we draw in closer and we look at where the college football playoff rankings are going in, with Florida coming in at number 6, obviously the question is, will Florida be able to compete and get into that top 4? And obviously that's points to the SEC championship game. So though, yes, they're going to face Tennessee, and Tennessee will provide some challenges, what they're really focused on is how can this team play a complete game. Last game, special teams won it for them. Special teams was crucial in that win, especially when, the offense wasn't firing all cylinders like they're used to. So that is something now they're wondering, we need to make sure we are playing a complete game. So that's where this Tennessee game comes into play. They're going to have to make sure that their defense is playing a complete game. What happens if the offense again plays, doesn't come out swinging in the first half. So this is where this game comes in. Make sure the defense, figure out that rotation. Have guys like Tyron Hopper have more reps. He didn't have any reps almost in the last game. These are the type of questions, these are the type of things they're going to work on as the SEC championship comes around in Atlanta.
Jackie, was Dan Mullen actually asked about the altercation with Todd Grantham on the sideline?
Yes, he was. I don't know if you've been following with what Dan Mullen thinks of Christmas decorations. 2 weeks ago, he said that you're not allowed to put Christmas decorations until after Thanksgiving. That's
Mm.
according to his wife, Megan Mullen. So he said the argument was about that Todd Grantham believed that you should have your Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving, and he disagreed. So obviously, he was having a jest and a joke about all the stuff going on. But obviously, we know that he's been frustrated with the defense, and I think it was against Vanderbilt. He was mentioning, that he wanted to see those younger guys rotated in. In the offense, we see those young guys rotated in quite frequently. And on defense, you don't see that quite often enough. And I think that's frustrated Dan Mullen. Guys like Tyron Hopper need more reps. At some point, you need to put those young guys in, especially when you have a lead. But also because, honestly, some of the veterans have not been playing as well as some of these new guys coming in. And it's a good question. Why isn't some of these guys in the secondary in particular? Why aren't these younger guys rotating in when the veterans aren't performing, completely on a consistent basis?
Well, Jackie, clearly when there's a disagreement, as there have been in my life, about when to put the Christmas decorations up when it's appropriate, you can't really plan that debate. It just, it's organic, and if it's going to happen at that point, you really can't shy away from it. You just have to deal with it in the middle of a football game. I'm sure that was the case. So the rushing attack is something that we've discussed many times throughout the season, and it not being, of course, the main focus of this offense that is producing so much yards, so many points through the air, but that it would need to be complementary, would have to be good enough to be respected by defenses. How do you feel, and how do the Gators feel about the development of the rushing attack?
I think it is getting better. I think, when you look at this rush defense compared to last year, you do see that the blocking is much better. Last year that was definitely an Achilles heel of this offense. But at the end of the day, when you have Kyle Trask and the way his season is going, you, that everyone's going to know that it's going to be mostly a passing attack. And you also see all the weapons that he has in the air with, Kyle Pitts back, Justin Shorter. But Damian Pierce is a great weapon to have on the ground. And Malik Davis does provide a pass catching ability. A few games ago, he went over 100 yards receiving. So these rushers that Florida has are really dynamic, and can add a different facet to this offense. But again, this team, no one's going out there and thinking, oh, Florida's going to run the ball today. No one's thinking that, because that Kyle Trask is going to throw the ball. He's going to aim for Kyle Pitts at least a couple times in the game, because come on, it's going to happen. It's already scripted. I always joke saying that this is a scheduled tweet play by play on a Saturday, because you expect Kyle Trask to throw to Kyle Pitts for at least a touchdown or two in a game. And you can also assume that he's going to hit, Grimes and Shorter, and now even Jacob Copeland. So they have so many wide receivers. They have so many talented over the air that's what's going to happen on offenses. Now, they are trying to run the ball a little bit, and by doing that, they might bring in Emory Jones. They've started to bring Emory Jones a little bit more under center. And when you expect Emory Jones to go under center, there's going to be more rushing attack. He kind of opens that side of the game a little bit more than Kyle Trask does. Now, Kyle Trask does a lot of great things inside the pocket, and he has been able to extend drives by scrambling a little bit, but that's not his forte. His forte is going to throw great balls in tight windows. That's his strength. Emory Jones, we haven't seen him quite do that, but he does provide another danger on the ground. And having him and Damian Pierce there will certainly give that a different way for defenses to stay honest. I think their offensive line has improved a lot in order to get them a rushing attack. Obviously, there is, everyone clearly sees there's a slight weakness on their right side, but their pass protection, continues to be sound. But they have improved. But again, this is an offense built to be a passing attack. They do have talented rushers, but this is the first year in a Florida Georgia game that the team that had the most rushes, won. Florida did not have more yards on the ground. Georgia did, but they won. This is the first time, I think, I can't remember how many years. I think actually it might be the first time in their history between those two teams that occurred. So this is just a very different year for Florida, and it seems like it's kind of fitting. It's 2020. It's unprecedented. So there's a lot of different things that are happening that it's not usual. It's not traditional.
We've got Jackie Franchuli on the line from SIsAllGators.com. Join her right there for Florida football coverage. You can hear the obvious insight and knowledge into Florida football every time Jackie joins us. You know, Jackie, one of the keys to having an elite wide receiver core, and we'll include the tight end, is not that you just have a bunch of fast guys that can catch the ball, but that you've got complementary elements. You've got the deep threat. You've got the polished number one guy that runs the right routes, is the surest guy that can gain separation, that can catch the ball consistently. The tight end that they certainly have, that's just a mismatch down the seam in particular. The slot guy that's quick and agile and can find the soft spot in the zone on a 3rd and 3. The more gadgety kind of guy that you're going to run the bubble screens and the tunnel screens and try to just get the ball in his hand so he can make moves in the open field and beat somebody one-on-one. They seem to have that as a very interesting complement to each other as you go man-to-man through that wide receiver and tight end core.
No, that's true. You look down the list, like I was saying, Kadarius Toney, for instance, that's that gadget player you're talking about. He's a prime example of what Florida has been able to accomplish. Just look at what Billy Gonzalez did. Kadarius Toney has always been a talented player. There's no doubt about it. But when Dan Mullen came in, he didn't know what to do with Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is not a player that followed the script. So when you have a guy like Dan Mullen who really likes to have his hands on a lot of things and likes to have a little bit of control, Kadarius Toney's not a type of player that will allow you to have that control. I remember a couple of plays where, this is when Felipe Franks was under center, where ended up Franks had to block for Kadarius Toney because Toney did not have the play as scripted because he went away from his blockers. He sometimes would run 40, 60 yards and only get you 5, or sometimes he would run 60, 70 yards and get you a touchdown. So he was definitely a high risk, possibly high reward type of player. But now look what Billy Gonzalez was able to do. This is a guy who has now become a more well-rounded wide receiver. This is definitely a breakout year for him. He's definitely a guy that can make something out of nothing for you. And now he's following the script. Now he's following the plays as Dan Mullen and Brian Johnson and Billy Gonzalez has kind of put together. So he's a great asset. We already mentioned Kyle Pitts. We talk about him all the time. He's one of the best players in college football right now. There's no doubt about it. So he's a mismatch nightmare in the end zone. Then you got guys like Trevon Grimes, a physical guy that can leap up. We've seen him. Those are the type of guys that, Kyle Trask really is able to utilize because, Kyle Trask said it best. He said, I just throw the ball in the air and allow our wide receivers to make plays because they have the physical attributes to make them. And that's what Trevon Grimes has. Justin Shorter has been a revelation for Florida. It took him a while to get him going, because obviously he came in as a transfer from Penn State in the spring, and it took a little while for him to learn the playbook, obviously with no spring and with all the COVID incidences, and it took a little while for him to get eligible from the NCAA since they kind of dragged their heels a little bit. So now he's able to come here and contribute. Florida just has way too many pass catchers that have talent and ability, and they're well-rounded. They're great blockers as well. Grimes has gone and helped with the blocking game as well. You've got Jacob Copeland has improved a bit, although he has missed a couple of blocks. He has certainly improved in that area. And, we mentioned tight ends. You got to give Kamori Gamble and Keon Zipper credit. When Kyle Pitts was out, Kamori Gamble and Keon Zipper really stepped up. They both had a couple of touchdowns, and Kamori Gamble was a great blocker for Florida. So I think that's what really stands out about Florida. You don't know who they're going to throw the ball to. There are often times that you have 10 or 11 guys catching the ball in a single game. And, that's something that happened last year as well. So that is something that Dan Mullen has been able to build with, obviously the help of Billy Gonzalez about making these guys well-rounded. And that's why when you ask me about, the rushing attack, and it's why I say, like, no one's being fooled here. Florida's going to pass the ball. So you have talented rushers right now, but we have a Kyle Trask throwing the ball the way he is, and you've got capable wide receivers like they have. They're going to throw the ball, and especially against Tennessee, I say they're going to attack that secondary. So I think that is something that we're going to clearly see, and I think the Florida wide receiver is just going to be out physical Tennessee.
The Gators and the Vols featured on CBS as the SEC National Game of the Week, 3:30 Eastern Time, again on Saturday afternoon. Played as scheduled. Hopefully we're in good shape with LSU on deck the next week. And, of course, the SEC championship game for Florida football, number 6 in the latest college football rankings. But it pretty much comes down to, unless there's an upset in the making beforehand, that it comes down to beat Alabama, make the playoff, lose the SEC championship game, and go to another bowl game, maybe the Orange Bowl I've seen cited as one of the options. Jackie, we appreciate you stopping by as always. Again, Jackie does an amazing job, so catch her on allgators.com on SI. Jackie, have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. Good night.
All right, talking Florida, talking Tennessee as well, and we will talk Tide next. We got a call in from our guy Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Hopefully we can track him back down as the Tide takes on the LSU Tigers. Of course, that game was supposed to be played several weeks ago, and now we know that they will be playing in another CBS highlighted game coming up this weekend. Stephen, hey, it's Mark. How you doing?
Doing well, and yourself?
Doing great, doing great. Appreciate you calling in to give us your Alabama report for this week. It's Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. So a game that we did not necessarily think was going to be played, as it was canceled several weeks ago. And there was some doubt as to whether we would see the Tide and the Tigers on the field here in 2020. But here we have it. And lo and behold, it's CBS's spotlighted game on Saturday night.
It was a game that, once again, Mark, a lot of fans wanted to see happen. You mentioned it was originally scheduled for November the 14th, but because of a rise in COVID cases, was postponed. But now CBS will have this game this Saturday at Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, and fans on both sides of the spectrum really excited to check this matchup out.
Alabama coming off a 42-13 throttling of Auburn in the Iron Bowl for the first time in forever. And Stephen may be able to figure out and tell us what year the Alabama-Auburn game does not conclude the regular season in the SEC. Do we know the last time Alabama did not play Auburn to finish its regular season?
Let's see here. Been an extremely long time there, Mark. You would probably have to go back to the 1980s. Okay. Yeah, I think something did happen with a weather situation or something in the early season during the 1980s that pushed another game to December, and the Iron Bowl was not the final game. But getting to the Tide's performance in the Iron Bowl, this is not a vintage Auburn team, but it's still a good team that was ranked in the top 25 in the nation. This Alabama team is taking care of business on the field, unlike anybody in the country right now, playing quality teams like an Auburn and completely dismantling them. I'm not seeing anybody else playing at this level right now, Stephen. What was the most interesting thing, Mark, is the entire week, understanding that Coach Saban would not be able to coach this game due to mild COVID symptoms. And he spoke with his coaching staff. He spoke with players. He spent a lot of time on Zoom and probably, talking to Steve Sarkisian via phone just to make sure Sarkisian knew what the game plan was. He knew what the mindset was coming into this game. And for Sark personally, he probably got a lot of emails, phone calls, text messages before the game, but after the game and during the game, to see how well he managed everything, to see how he had the offense flowing, but not just the offense flowing, but defense seemed to feed off of his energy, and they played well as that side of the ball is peaking at the right time. Just after the game, the excitement that fans had inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, Steve Sarkisian standing in for Nick Saban and coaching a strong game. People were very happy about that.
So Saban doesn't coach against Auburn, but based on the guidelines and how long that quarantine had to last, we know that he's good to check back in on the sideline against LSU. But at what point in the week is he going to be able to get back on the practice field?
At what point? I think he was back out there actually today, Mark. I don't think today he was back out there. I know Monday the team had a small night walkthrough. He wasn't out there Monday, but between Tuesday and Wednesday, I know he was definitely out there today, but he was probably out there Tuesday as well. But if I had to put my finger on it, I know today he was out there.
Got our SEC show on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Appreciate everybody stopping by. We've got 18 online, and that should surge much higher as we just got off the line talking Florida State football. We got Stephen M. Smith on the line talking Alabama LSU on a Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time on CBS. So, Stephen, when you look at this LSU offense in particular, my goodness, I don't know what they're possibly thinking in that offensive room to deal with the way the Tide's playing on defense, and they're coming off an effort, to use a better term, against Texas A&M when it took them until the 59th minute of the game to finally get the ball in the end zone. This on paper is a huge mismatch.
This on paper, Mark, it looks like a bloodbath on paper, especially when you consider this was a national championship team in the LSU just a season ago. It had so many players poached from that roster to go to the NFL draft, including 4 to 5 first-round picks. Yeah, 2 coaches leave for other offers, and Dave Aranda, the defensive coordinator, and Joe Brady, the passing game coordinator. And then you had Jamar Chase to opt out before the season started, and here's Terrace Marshall 7 games into this season. He goes, well, I'm done. I'm about to prepare now for the NFL for the NFL draft. So it's just been a very troublesome season for the Tigers. Probably the best opportunity they're going to have is possibly starting Max Johnson at quarterback over TJ Finley, though Finley is a bit more athletic. Max Johnson's done a much better job actually protecting the football. They've got 4 good receivers, but none of the 4 would be a number 1 option. Kayshon Bouttie's pretty good. Racey McMath is good. They've got a couple of other guys, but neither of those guys are Jamar Chase or Terrace Marshall. I mean, the bigger issue, Mark, is they have not been able to really successfully run the football, even with John Emery Jr., the 5-star running back. So it's been very perplexing for LSU fans coming off a national championship. You bring in the number 4 recruiting class in the nation. You think you should be able to reload, but you're staring at a 3-4 record. Not happy are the LSU fans right now.
For as scintillating as the offense was for LSU last year, for as magical as that season was and dominant against one of the more difficult schedules you're going to see, Alabama made a furious comeback in the second half in Tuscaloosa against LSU. I believe down like 20-21 at half, something in that range.
20 at half. It was 33-13 at half.
Okay. 46-41 final. The Tide scored late to make it interesting, but made a furious comeback. If Alabama wins that game, they win the tiebreaker, the division, despite the loss to Auburn, and they go to the SEC championship game and most likely to the college football playoff. So for as much as Alabama was dismissed late in the season because they found themselves on the outside looking in and there was no way for them to fight back into the college football playoff race, they were that close to still reaching the SEC championship game and the playoff. We had talked about this a few weeks ago, Stephen, when we were setting it up for the matchup we expected that week before it was canceled and now postponed. That extra incentive for this Alabama team to maybe make a statement with the team in front of them across the line of scrimmage that took it away from them just last year.
There's a lot of incentive here, Mark, and the craziest thing about all of this is Coach Saban has never really been one to bring up, revenge games. So he has a pretty strong record in these types of matchups. And for the first time, the media was able to throw the question to him, but they didn't frame it as a revenge question. but Nick Saban actually came out with a thought to talk about how the players, they do see this as a revenge opportunity. So the fact that Nick Saban is even speaking on the fact that this is a revenge game, this is a revenge opportunity, going back to after the game and what Coach Ed Orgeron said in the locker room inside the Bryant-Denny Stadium following that matchup. These players know what's at stake. The coaching staff knows what's at stake. They understand that last year, for the first time in 6 years, they missed out on the college football playoff, and they never intend on doing that. This weekend is going to be a very intriguing, very interesting weekend.
Stephen, as it stands right here on a Wednesday night with games being kicked off in the SEC at noon on Saturday, we're holding our breath. All 14 games are in play, or I should say all 14 teams and 7 games are in play. No cancellations as it stands right now, so we are hoping for the best, including Alabama LSU at 8 o'clock Eastern time on CBS Saturday night. Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Catch him here on YouTube. Again, when can they catch your live broadcast right here on YouTube, Stephen?
They can catch the show, Mark, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. It's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on YouTube for Touchdown Alabama Magazine.
And Stephen, for those of us who watch Paul Feinbaum, I caught you on there the other day. So when do those appearances come up?
Well, they come up when the producers of the Feinbaum Show text or call me, which they've been texting and calling me out of the blue here recently, and I just have to find my way to get them in there.
That is tremendous. That is tremendous. That is great stuff. Stephen, we appreciate you stopping by. You have a great rest of your night.
Absolutely, Mark. You guys take care.
Our guy, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Yeah, I was watching the Feinbaum Show the other day as I was working, as I typically do, just offset right here, snuggle up with my laptop and turn on some football, the zillion games that I DVR'd over the weekend, or just catch a Colin Cowherd or Paul Feinbaum or whomever, or maybe sometimes I've got to get away from sports and watch something else. It used to be news, but that's been too depressing over the last year. So I've veered away from the news compared to what I used to consume. But I'm watching Paul Feinbaum, and lo and behold, I hear the voice of Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Bam, right there on Paul Feinbaum. Mighty impressive. So good for Stephen. It was great to see him and hear him. All right. Let's run down the SEC schedule on Saturday. Certainly, let's not look past Auburn at home against Texas A&M, as the Aggies are vying for a non-conventional trip to the college football playoff without a division or conference championship. And certainly at number 5 in the rankings right now, they have a shot. They're going to have to gain respect. And, of course, have the one disappointing loss against Bama by 4 touchdowns. If that were a close loss, then they would really be in good shape. But it's Texas A&M going to Auburn. They've lost to the Tigers the last 2 years. Arkansas, Missouri. The Hogs, of course, much improved. Mizzou, probably one of the more quiet winning teams in the nation at 4-3. So check out the Mizzou Tigers, now 4-3, coming off a smashing of Vandy, 41-0, even though there was a tremendous kicking effort from what I understand on the Vandy side. It was just a world-renowned, just beyond belief kicking exhibition by Vanderbilt last week. So despite that, Mizzou was still able to hold off the Commodores 41-0. They've got Arkansas at home this weekend. Also on Saturday, as we talked to Jackie Franchuli from All Gators on SI, Florida, Tennessee. Of course, the Gators have to get through Tennessee and also have to get through LSU before the SEC championship game. If Florida wins one of those 2 games, they will punch their ticket to Atlanta. If Florida would somehow lose both of those games, to Tennessee and to LSU, then Georgia, by sweeping its final 2 games against, I believe it's Vandy and Missouri. That sounds right. Then Georgia if Florida would somehow lose both of these games, and I know Tennessee has lost 6 consecutive weeks, that Georgia can still get to the SEC championship game. We don't anticipate that. But if Florida, of course, loses one of these 2 games against Tennessee and LSU, that will squash their college football playoff hopes, despite still making their way to Atlanta, representing the East with an opportunity to win the SEC. Wouldn't that be something if Florida would lose to either LSU or Tennessee, go to Atlanta, beat Alabama, finish 9-2, and most likely still wouldn't get to the college football playoff with that second loss? And then that would be a bit of a mess, because you would have Florida with 2 losses, but an SEC championship and a win over Alabama. You would have Alabama with only 1 loss, but they didn't win the conference and they just had lost to Florida. Stranger things have happened. Vanderbilt at Georgia. Yeah, there's the game that I'm looking for right there. Again, Vanderbilt, by far the worst team in the SEC, just fired its coach, Derek Mason. Finally, Derek Mason, after 6 seasons at Vandy, 27-55. I shot a video, posted it the other day. Please check out my review of Derek Mason's work at Vanderbilt and my evaluation of his performance and the school's performance in building or trying to field a football team in the SEC. Kentucky, South Carolina, that game in Lexington, Alabama, LSU, as well, as we've talked it up from Baton Rouge. All right. We also have Jake Evans on the line from the Rebel Walk to talk up some Ole Miss. And Jake, how you doing tonight?
Mark, I'm hanging in there. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You know, I got to admit, now that I've looked at the SEC schedule, I just saw a list of games, and I didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just gave it a look and thought, okay, it looks like everybody's playing. We got everybody on. No Ole Miss this week. Mississippi State. Those are the 2 teams not playing.
Yeah, so Ole Miss right now, obviously they're still working through all of the postponement from LSU and from Texas A&M. Right now it's still up in the air. It's tentatively set to be for Ole Miss to play A&M on the 12th and then LSU on the 19th. But like everything this year, it's completely up in the air. Ole Miss had a reported today that they had a couple of positives this morning, and that they're doing contact tracing with that. So they shut down practice today. They shut down the facility. So they had the day off today. And so, right now for the last couple of weeks, Ole Miss has been hoping that other people can get their COVID situations together. Ole Miss has done a pretty good job, but now, Ole Miss is having to face the same thing. So it's, like I said, it's really up in the air.
Okay. So again, just to recap, Ole Miss is at 4-4. They missed the Texas A&M game on the road 2 weeks ago, just beat Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl 31-24. And you're saying the final 2 should be
A&M on the 12th and LSU on the 19th.
LSU on the 19th, the day of the SEC championship game, which I find fascinating that we know that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 will be playing conference games on the day of their conference championship games. And now, because of the scheduling flexibility that is needed to happen in the SEC will also be playing games on the day of the SEC championship game. Fascinating. Rebels at 4-4. Jake, your thoughts about how the season's played out?
Well, I tell you what, and obviously this is going to sound biased, but in my least biased opinion, Ole Miss is one of the most fun teams in college football right now. Lane Kiffin is essentially playing with a free year. I mean, obviously everybody is this year, but Lane Kiffin's kind of gotten this whole year where he basically gets to experiment with this offense. That's what everybody was looking for coming into this year, was what was he going to do with this offense? And so it's been great because we get to basically do a dry run with this team. If we want to run it back with the exact same team next year, which it looks like a lot of the major pieces are going to be back. Matt Corral today told Lane Kiffin that he's 1,000% coming back. So, right now the vibe around Oxford, although it's 4-4, there's a couple of those games, a couple of those losses that could have gone the other way. That's how it goes with everybody every year. But we feel really good right now. We like where we're at with Lane Kiffin. He seems to just be getting better and better every week. He seems to be doing a better and better job of promoting Ole Miss, promoting, he tweets "come to the SIP" all the time. He's he markets himself, the school, the program. He does it all on his own, and he really doesn't even need any help. And props to him, because we love to see it.
So, Jake, you've got an idea what my background is. So I was down there in Ole Miss, Mississippi State country for 6 to 7 years back at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. And so I've got a soft spot in my heart for the SEC in that neck of the woods in the SEC West with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Took in my share of Egg Bowls and other sporting events between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So, of course, very few fans in the stadium. Just give us a feel for what that Egg Bowl was like this year versus previous years. Of course, it was a nice win for Ole Miss to come out on top, 31-24 in a pretty decent ball game. But just your thoughts about this year's Egg Bowl.
Well, going into the week, the main storyline that everyone thought was going to be, the way the game played out, it pretty much happened. We figured that Ole Miss's offense was going to push State the whole entire time, and really we figured. I mean, again, this is as an Ole Miss fan, we think Ole Miss's team last week was miles better than Mississippi State's team was. Obviously, they put on a great showing against Georgia, and so that kind of made us scratch our heads a little bit and go, maybe these guys aren't as bad as we think. But going in, everybody was thinking that it's going to be Mississippi State's defense that makes this work. Either they stop Ole Miss's offense and they give themselves a chance, or Ole Miss throws all over them, and it's over before it begins. And really that's how it played out. Mississippi State's defense was good enough. They held them in the game. Obviously Ole Miss went for it. I think 5 or 6 times on fourth down. Missed out on the first couple of them down in the red zone when they were looking to cash in on points. So obviously the score could have been a lot different. Maybe some of those turn into field goals. Maybe you call a different play and you score a touchdown. So really and truly, I don't really think the score was very representative of it. It felt like Ole Miss dominated the whole game. It felt like Mississippi State was having to play catch up the entire time, which, I mean, that's just the best feeling in the world. And so, coming out of that game, like I said, we really like where we're at. We think this team is doing a great job of trending upward. Obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the season, but if we were to be done right now, we'd be happy with how this season would be, and we'd be as fired up as possible going into next season.
And Ole Miss is right on that line of allowing about 20% stadium capacity. Is that
20 to 25, I think. I don't remember what the exact number is, but it's 16,000-ish, something like that, I think.
Which is a much better atmosphere for college football than we've seen elsewhere. At least it's something. It's some energy in the stadium. So I have picked around at Ole Miss a little bit this year. I saw most of the Alabama game. I saw the exciting portions of the Auburn game. Unfortunately, a loss there that's very controversial, or we're looking at a 5-3 season right now. So I saw the second half of the Auburn game. I was in and out of the Egg Bowl here. So Matt Corral, 24 touchdowns, 9 picks, completing 73% of his passes. You set us up well a number of times in the offseason for Corral and John Rice Plumlee and what his contribution might be to the offense. I seem to see Rice Plumlee more so early in the season. What is factored into, we know Corral's the guy, but Rice Plumlee getting in there, making some plays and getting some packages?
Well, really and truly, going into the season, obviously, so Lane Kiffin didn't announce that Matt Corral was the starter until game day. We did not know until the day of the Florida game that he was going to be the one. He was going to be QB1. And so after that, we thought because of that we would see a lot more of John Rice Plumlee than we have. But really and truly, when it comes down to it, it's nothing against John Rice Plumlee. Matt Corral has just been absolutely lights out this year. I mean, you mentioned he's got 9 interceptions. 6 of those were in the Arkansas game. So
that's right.
Outside of that Arkansas game, I mean, really and truly, if you take away that Arkansas game, Matt Corral is in the Heisman conversation. There's a lot of numbers where if you wipe out that Arkansas game, he's up there. He's better than Kyle Trask in a lot of those areas. And one of the things that we keep seeing week in and week out is, the passer rating and just how efficient he is. He's up there in the top 5 in the country. And like I said, he threw 6 interceptions in one game. So, like I said a minute ago, really and truly, it's not anything that John Rice Plumlee has done wrong. It's just that Matt Corral has been firing on all cylinders better than we could have ever imagined.
Elijah Moore, I saw some numbers on him during the offseason about how dominant he was and how little they got out of the rest of the receiver core. You know, he had X number of catches. Everybody else had this. He had this many yards. Everybody else had this, touchdowns, etc. And I thought, well, they're not going to be able to survive going ahead in that fashion this season. And with Lane Kiffin calling the plays, I'm sure he'll look for some other options. And there's certainly other guys. Kenny Yeboah in particular, he's made some monster plays this year. He's got 6 touchdowns. People found out about him against Alabama, but Elijah Moore still has 86 catches. And the second guy is Yeboah with 27. So he is still dominating the passing game.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, that's one of the things that we love about Lane Kiffin is that, you know, he told us early on in the season, he said, look, our best players are going to get the football. He said, we're going to figure out how to do it. He said, that's my job. Let me figure that out. But we're going to get the ball in our best players' hands. And you know, that's a lot of that with a player like Elijah Moore, who is just clearly so dominant and who was targeted so much. A lot of teams who have players like that, they're tempted to use that more to draw more defenders towards him, away from other people, use him to get other people open. That's how a lot of receivers like him are used. However, you know, obviously Lane Kiffin does that here and there. But when it comes down to it, Elijah Moore is just better than 99% of the guys that he's up against. He finds ways to get open. Lane Kiffin's got a very good offense where it's a lot of fast motions. It's people crossing and cutting, and it creates chaos. And somebody like Elijah Moore, he's small. He can get lost in the flow of things. He's faster than most of the people on the field. He's got great hands. He runs great routes. When you add all that together, that guy deserves to touch the ball 85 times in a season. Now, you know, it's crazy that he's already broken A.J. Brown's single season reception record, and he did it in 9 games, which is another mind-blowing thing. But, you know, when it comes down to it, people say, hey, you need to spread the ball around more. You can't be one-dimensional with Elijah Moore. To those people, I would say, stop Elijah Moore, then we'll talk. Nobody's done it yet, so there's no reason to give it to anybody else.
Yeah, as long as somebody's catching the ball and they're gaining first downs and then scoring points, I don't think they keep that on the scoreboard that you didn't spread it out. Same guy scored 4 touchdowns. They still count. Now, it doesn't seem like it should work that way.
Offense,
but if it does, it does.
Exactly. And so, you know, it's been a great flow this season. You know, this team that we have, that Matt Luke left to, it's built for speed like this. Granted, there's a few players that don't fit into the scheme 100%, and I think that because of that, we expect to see a couple of receivers transfer out. We're not 100% sure yet. We expect, not just receivers. We expect to see a handful of skill players maybe open up, play around with the idea of the portal, and kind of see what happens. But you know, when it comes down to it, we love the offense that he's given us right now, and we think that he's going to be able to carry. I mean, because it speaks for itself. You can show a recruit this offense, you can show the tape, and you can just say, you make your own judgment. You tell me if this is something you want to be a part of. And the thing is, for a lot of people, this is exactly what you want. You want a high fly. If you're a skill player in high school right now, you want a high flying offense. You want the ball as many times as you can get it. I mean, you want numbers. You want to try to go to the next level. And this is Ole Miss is a great place to do it. They're starting to show that, and that's something, you know, that we're in a much better position than we were last year in that scenario. Ole Miss was not an attractive destination a couple of years ago. Lane Kiffin has completely flipped the script in not even a full calendar year.
For years, Lane Kiffin has displayed his touchdown celebration that goes on even before, you know, the touchdowns actually scored. You know, when he sees the play develop and then, there it goes. The ball's in the air. He's already celebrating. So he did that a few weeks ago against South Carolina. And fill in the blanks for me, because I was watching part of that game, but I missed his celebration. Then I heard so much about it, but he threw something. It hit fill in the blanks for me.
So it was a long Elijah Moore touchdown. Elijah Moore pretty much ran a seam right up the middle. The safety decided that he wanted to cover someone else for whatever reason, and
he didn't look at the stats. Apparently,
right. He clearly had no idea.
That's the guy you cover.
That's the one that you cover, especially when he's in the slot. When he's outside, he's not quite as dangerous because he doesn't have as much room. When he's in the middle of the field, you got to put at least one guy on him, if not 2. So yeah, it was a simple route up the middle, and they left him all alone. He was all by himself, no one within probably 20 yards of him in any direction. And it was one of those plays where, he talks about it. Kiffin says, if I see it and I know it's going to be a touchdown, there's a lot of times ball hadn't even been snapped and he's already doing this. He already knows. And so it was one of those plays right there where Corral drops back. He sees him all by himself. It's actually funny. Corral said that those are the hardest throws to make because when you've got a guy that wide open, he's like, you can't miss him. You just can't miss him. So yeah, hit him for a long bomb. Elijah Moore took it all the way to the house. And Kiffin went flying down the sideline and had the clipboard, chucked the thing up in the air. It actually flew into the stands. They had an assistant coach that had to go into the stands and fish out his clipboard with, I'm assuming it's got the play sheets and everything on it, and he just chucked it in the stands.
That's what it was. Yes, the clipboard.
Yep. I tell you, like it's things like that about Lane Kiffin that we just love. You don't have to market yourself when your coach is going to do it for you. You don't need to do anything. You just let Lane Kiffin coach the game. He'll take care of everything else. He's a one-man wrecking crew.
That's a pretty good heave from the sideline too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't that thing's aerodynamic. He must have caught the wind right because that's a good 20 or probably 20 yards from the edge of the sideline all the way to the back wall there. And it went up a good 10 or 15 rows. It wasn't like it just cleared it. He sent that thing flying.
You got Jake Evans on the Rebel Walk. Please join him, the rest of the staff there. They do an excellent job covering Ole Miss athletics, top to bottom, football, baseball, basketball, all around. And you know what, Jake? Let's give some love to the defense. It's not a great unit, but they've been deplorable the last few years, and they're playing considerably better.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, that's obviously, that's been Ole Miss's kryptonite, really and truly for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years. It just is what it is. Ole Miss is, there's great offenses in the SEC, great offenses in the SEC West. Unfortunately, Ole Miss they had a rough few years. They couldn't get in the people that they needed and that they wanted. It just didn't really pan out for a couple of years. However, this year, they started off slow again. Things weren't really kicking early on, but like you said, they've gotten better. They're trending in the right direction. And while they're still not, playing where we would love for them to be, they're in a much better spot. One of the big things that's been incredibly helpful this year, or in the last week, that was in the Egg Bowl, Otis Reese was finally cleared by the NCAA. He fought his transfer for the entire year, and for some reason, the NCAA never cleared him, even though it's a free year. They never cleared him. Until right before the Egg Bowl. So he made his first start as an Ole Miss Rebel in the Egg Bowl, played the lights out. He was an instant impact on the field, had I believe 8 tackles, if I remember right, in his first game. And so, he's a guy that he was a 4-star coming out of high school, went to Georgia, a highly touted safety, kind of plays like a nickel type where they use him to blitz a lot too. And they did it a handful of times the other night. And, obviously, you would like to think that one guy is not the piece that's going to make the whole machine flow. But really and truly, it kind of seemed like, once he got in there, it seemed like everything started to click better. I don't know if that's because he's just a skilled player. I don't know if it's because he's a fantastic leader. I don't know what it is, but things were clicking better in that Mississippi State game. And, hopefully we get to play these last 2 games because we're excited to see this defense. We're excited to see more of Otis Reese. And like I said, we're trending in the right direction. So we want to see where it goes.
Ole Miss at 4-4, coming off an Egg Bowl victory over Mississippi State off this week. And again, as we are all keeping our fingers crossed for games to be played in the SEC, a date with Texas A&M next week. Jake, we appreciate you stopping by again. Everybody check out Jake and everybody else at the Rebel Walk. Appreciate you stopping by, Jake. Have a good night.
Thank you much for having me.
And there we go. As I was switching Jake out, I didn't intend on switching Kevin in automatically, but that's what the program did for me. So here we are, Kevin. Sorry about that. Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing good. I was like, wait a second. Now, hey, the other guy's gone. Now I'm on, which is cool. So I'm doing good, Mark. It's great, as always, to be on with you. And as you said just a second ago, it's, at this point, hoping that we're gonna have football. So Kentucky, as far as we know, continuing on from last week, Kentucky, Mark Stoops on Monday said that they're still down about 25 to 28 people in the program. Some of those are players, some of those are, staff. But as of right now, they're still on track to play South Carolina on Saturday. And fun little bit of trivia. The game Saturday night, I saw this, Twitter, wherever, you find all your information. The last time Kentucky played a regular season game in the month of December was in 1907. And they weren't even known as Kentucky then. They were called Kentucky State University or Kentucky State College or something like that. And they played another, I can't remember what the name was now, but it was Transylvania. Anyway, Kentucky won that game 5-0. But, anyway, it's kind of one of those fun little things. And the thing about it is, we're talking about COVID and everything. I believe if assuming they play on Saturday, Kentucky and South Carolina will be the only two teams that have gotten their 10 games in uninterrupted. Basically, not having the whole, Kentucky, they had the Missouri and Georgia game switched around earlier in the season, but from start to finish, have gotten the entire 10 games in.
Yes, Kentucky at home Saturday night, SEC Network, 7:30 Eastern time against South Carolina. The Gamecocks come in at 2-7. The Cats are 3-6. All right, Kelvin Joseph, fine cornerback who obviously is extremely talented to be on draft boards all over the place, has opted out for the final couple games of 2020.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that was Mark Stoops came in his Monday press conference with the media, like he always does, and was commenting how, commending the players, how this whole season no one has opted out. Nobody has, everybody's just gone through and made it through the season, and just, it's been so great with everything that's gone on, just trying to get through the season with, Coach John Schlarman's passing away. And then like 6 hours later, the announcement comes out that Joseph is declaring that not only is he declaring for the draft, but he's just not going to play in the last two games. Now, the story that's going around is that basically he just didn't want to play this week. Like, he wanted to sit out against South Carolina and then maybe come back for the bowl game. But Stoops said, no, we're not doing that. So that's the story as we've heard it. So basically, yeah, he's become de facto Kentucky's first one-and-done football player. So you think about John Calipari, how he's built his whole thing at Kentucky on the one-and-done program. Guys come in for 1 year and leave. So Joseph, in essence, becomes like the first one-and-done football player for the Cats. And it's a big loss because, you and I have talked throughout the season. He struggled really badly the first couple games. He got burnt against Auburn, kind of got burnt against Ole Miss, and then got his legs under him, got back into playing, and starting with that Tennessee game, has played really, really well, has four interceptions, number one in the SEC, and I think second or third in the nation. And so, yeah, it's a big loss. It's a little bit surprising, but, it is what it is, I guess.
I'm also surprised by his decision, or his would-be decision, his offer, because in recent years we've seen a number of players opt out of the bowl games. Mm-hmm. And then in this particular season, as teams are moving out of contention and the last few games are in jeopardy, we see a couple players on a number of prominent teams that are opting to go to the NFL draft and make that decision early and just prepare for the NFL draft and not risk injury. But for Joseph to actually offer to play in the bowl game, but not in the last regular season game, is interesting.
Right. Like I said, now that's the story. Now, okay. I know he offered, he didn't want to play on Saturday, and then whether or not the bowl game, like I said, I've heard both ways. So, but I'm just throwing that out there. So just so that everybody knows. So if it was one way or the other, we may never know, but that's just what we've heard. Now, like I said, I don't know. I was a little surprised by it, basically along the lines of what you said as well. But, it is what it is. And Kentucky, I think Cedric Dort will probably move over and take Joseph's spot for Saturday. And then they have a really good freshman, Carrington Valentine, that they're really high on, who's played some this year. And probably, a guy for the future you might see also on Saturday night, because they're going to need – they'll need it. They'll need somebody. I think Shi Smith is supposed to be back for South Carolina, and he's basically just killed Kentucky, over the last few years. He's always seems to have a great game against Kentucky. So they're going to need somebody on that secondary to step up and stop him.
We talk SEC football here every Wednesday night at 8:00 Eastern time as we wind down the season. And it's always a guessing game as to what the schedule is going to look like each and every week. If the schedule holds as it's currently constructed, it'll be another oddity that a team like Kentucky and South Carolina will conclude their season 2 weeks before a number of other teams, not just the teams that reach the conference championship game, but also other teams that will be making up games. And again, it's going to be an odd conference championship game and day across college football, with other games in addition to the conference championship games being played.
Right, right. Because it is weird, because you and I had talked that we had heard that they were going to postpone the Alabama game, and we'd heard they were, the Florida game. I'm still amazed that they even played last week. I think Kentucky should get a lot of credit for going out and still playing, because teams have, I think, canceled for having a lot less players out than what Kentucky did. But yeah, it is going to be weird that you're going to have the championship game and then possibly some other SEC teams playing each other that day. And not only the SEC, the Big Ten, maybe Pac-12. I don't know where you find TV for all these games, but for us to sit and watch it's certainly going to be interesting. And then, I'm still waiting. I'm sure, I know you have your Ohio State show every day. I didn't get to catch any of that one, but how that's going to work out with the playoff with Ohio State. So if they by rule, if they don't play on Saturday or next Saturday, they're not supposed to be eligible for the Big Ten championship. So, but do you
both of those games? They have to play both of those games.
Right. Yeah. And then do you still put them? I mean, I think obviously they're one of the 4 best teams. If you just, they probably should be in there, but do you follow the rules? And, like I said, in 2020, there's really no rules for anything, right? So it's just whatever works for this week, I think.
Well, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee has selected teams that have not won their conference in the past anyway. So that would just be another example right there. Kevin, based on the number of players that are missing these games, and of course, their names are not released for good reason, but with the knowledge of who's injured and who's on that list and inactive for the game because of injury, there's usually a pretty logical deduction as to who's on the virus list, who's not eligible and making and participating in the game because of that. What prominent players are not showing up of the last few weeks amongst these dozens of players that can't suit up?
Well, probably the biggest one is Christopher Rodriguez, Kentucky's leading rusher. He's been out, didn't play against Alabama, didn't play against Florida, and like I said, we can just all assume that that's what the issue is. They think he's going to be back for Saturday. AJ Rose and Cavassier Smoke obviously have done some good things there running the ball. Justin Rigg, tight end, starting tight end, he's been out. Those are probably the biggest ones. There's been a couple of other, not necessarily starters. One of the offensive linemen was out against Alabama. I think someone on the defense, the names are escaping me right now, but Rodriguez is probably the biggest one, just for what he's been able to do this year. I think he's rushed for somewhere between 500 and 600 yards. Kentucky's going to have they had a 1,000-yard rusher, I think, each of the last four seasons, and unless Rodriguez runs for 400 some yards against South Carolina, and then a possible bowl game. Then that streak's going to end this year. And then Kentucky's, this would have been in a normal year. Kentucky, with their 3-4 games that we always count as victories, would have had a winning season. So this would have been a 5th straight winning season this year, but that's gone. That one's not happening this year either. But getting back to your question, Rodriguez is probably the biggest name that's been on that list. And like I said, they think he should be back and able to play on Saturday.
6.4 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns for Rodriguez this season. So, Kevin, you mentioned the record at 3-6, one last game here, and then we'll see what happens with bowl participation, because on one hand, everyone's eligible. It doesn't matter what your record is, but there were 41 bowl games last year. We just had another cancellation today, the Las Vegas Bowl. So I think we're down to maybe 33, 34, something in that range.
Right.
So there's going to be some determination of record. So it's not just like you can go play in a bowl game just because you want to. So anyway, we'll see how that sorts itself out. What I was going to get to was just that Mark Stoops has slowly been building a winner at Kentucky. It took him a few years, but once he got over the hump, got to a bowl game, won a bowl game, finished in the top 10 a couple of years ago, despite injuries at the quarterback position, still pulled out an 8-5 finish in a bowl victory last year. Then they take this hit this year. And I got to think that Kentucky fans were extremely happy with Mark Stoops' performance headed into this season. Are they pretty much just counting this as 2020 being 2020, and he's still on the right track doing all the good things to build this program?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people, you have your, some, and every fan base is like that. You have the, I don't want to say crazies, but, people that, they didn't go 8-4. So it's obviously the worst season. But I think, and I'm included in that, I think a lot of people are willing to put an asterisk beside this year and say, the all SEC schedule. I think, we talked way back in the summer that, there were going to be teams that were going to struggle. I didn't think Kentucky was going to be one of them because of all the players that they had coming back, the entire offensive line, the running backs, healthy Terry Wilson. But you think about, they got, the two added, games Kentucky ended up with this year was Alabama and Ole Miss. And honestly, the Ole Miss game, if you go back, Kentucky should have won that game. Ended up losing in overtime on a missed extra point. So you think about that right there. You take that game, that's a Kentucky win. Then you beat South Carolina. You're at 5-5, and everybody's like, basically you won 5 games in the SEC. Kentucky in a normal year very rarely wins 5 games. In an 8-game SEC schedule. I think most people are still think Coach Stoops is on the right track. I do think they need to make some changes. They need to make some changes. Probably the offense. Eddie Grant, honestly, offensive coordinator, has been the guy that's getting most of the grief or most of the verbiage, whatever, directed, because everybody sees, as we've talked about, the pinball, Madden-like numbers, everybody's scoring 40, 50 points, even, Nick Saban, embracing the offense. And you see Kentucky has been under 300 yards total offense 6 of the 9 games this year. And that's with all these players coming back. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked this year. And no one has been able to no one's been able to put their finger on what the exact problem is. But like I said, I think for the most part, people are willing to write this one off, like I said, as an asterisk and just, basically just a byproduct of this year in general. And I do think there will be some changes. You hear rumors, of course. I think, I don't know the Grand will be gone, but or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I do think Coach Stoops is going to sit down after the season and think about, going forward, because Terry Wilson will be gone, and then you have Joey Gatewood and Bo Allen, 2 really, really capable quarterbacks, and you got to figure out, how you can best use them, other than just handing the ball off, 3 yards, or in Kentucky's case, usually 5 yards in a cloud of dust. But to answer, I think most people are willing to accept, okay, this is just a strange season. And then now if we come back at the end, if we're talking Kentucky's 3-6 or 4-7 at this point next year, then yeah, I think you're going to definitely, they'll be feeling, Coach Stu's probably feeling some heat, but I think they'll be back to that 6-7 win plateau probably next year. So.
The Kentucky football season concludes Saturday night at home, 7:30 Eastern time kickoff on the SEC Network against South Carolina. And then we'll see about postseason play after that. And speaking of which, if you want to check out the latest in bowl projections, you check out Kevin's work on Last Word on College Football. Just go to Last Word on College Football. Check out the work from our friends Tony Siracusa, Jason Ray, and Kevin. And Kevin does his bowl projections at the conclusion of every college football weekend.
Yeah, if I could just get the selection committee to listen to me, but like I said, we're a lot higher on BYU than they are. We have them in the Fiesta Bowl. I have Kentucky in the Music City Bowl this week, playing Iowa, which would be an interesting game because that's Mark Stoops' alma mater. And I don't have South Carolina. Sorry, Gamecock fans. I don't have South Carolina in a game this week, but that's, things can happen, especially now with the Las Vegas Bowl officially being canceled. So it was kind of a given. Everybody thought it was going to be, but anyway, but yeah, like I said, I have Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Ohio State. That's our 4 championship teams in the championship game in that order. So you have Alabama and Ohio State, and then Clemson and Notre Dame playing each other. I don't know. Basically it would be a week and a half after playing each other in the ACC championship game. So I guess it could be like a rubber match or something.
All right. Part 3. All right, Kevin. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Mark. It's always great to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
As always, we'll see you.
All right. Thank you. Talk to you later.
So we had one person in particular ask in the live chat what the number is. It's right there on the screen, 860-325-3687. I'll take a couple of calls before we sign off for the night. Want to let everyone know and remind you that starting, what was it, just a few nights ago? Or no, we started last week. We're here every Monday through Friday, every weeknight at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So we do have some other live streams that kind of segue into this one. So at times we will be on earlier, like tonight, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time with SEC Live, and then that just kind of moves right into our call-in show. Also have another comment to make about our call-in number, but I'll do that after I take the call here. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Good evening, Mark. It's Dominic. How you doing?
Dominic, how are you? What's up?
Oh, nothing much, really. How's your day been today, man?
I'm doing just fine. Doing great. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm looking at a couple of the college football games, and turns out one should be pretty good. That would be, where is it? Oh, yeah, Alabama and LSU.
You think that one is going to be pretty good?
Yeah, because that one was originally scheduled for November, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, and I actually realized that it was going to be on a Saturday night. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we'll see how things go for that game. But Ohio State and Michigan State pretty good. But I mean, I usually don't have much to talk about. But I heard that Ole Miss was getting today off, but they canceled practice today. But Ole Miss for you.
Pardon me? What was the question?
What do you think about Ole Miss possibly playing Texas A&M next week?
What do I think about it? I think that it's on the schedule, so they're going to play it unless they don't meet the guidelines. That's typically how these are being handled week to week.
Yeah, week to week.
Day to day.
I totally agree. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I agree with what you said there, and I better head to bed. Have a good night.
All right, that was sudden, fortunately. Okay. So we've got a phone line here, 860-325-3687. So understand something that I explain from time to time because some people seem to be a bit confused about it. This is a phone line for the show. It's not my personal phone number. I would not give away my personal phone number. So that is a call-in number for the show. Also, keep in mind that I don't get your number either. So when you call in, I don't see your number. I see 860-325-3687. It's a buffer to protect the privacy of myself and to protect your privacy. But for some reason, now this has happened in the past, but it's been just off the hook over the last several days that I've been getting phone calls all through the day and before the show and after the show on this number. And I'm not going to answer the call-in number during the day. I'm not going to answer the call-in number before or after the show. That is used for the call-in show. So I'm not answering the line for the call-in show when it's not the call-in show. So please don't call the call-in line when we're not on the air. If you would like to get in contact with me, that's absolutely okay. Then send me an email at 860 or send me an email at MarkRogersTV@gmail. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Yes. Hello? Oh, lost that call for some reason. So there you go. We are looking for a sponsor for this call-in show that we have committed to on a nightly basis, at least through the season. I would hope to take it past that and be here every night, aside from personal engagements and things going on. And then I would like to be able to backfill with fill-in hosts that we can keep the show going each and every night. That would be the aim, the goal. So any team-specific live stream that you enjoy, whether that be Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, Nebraska, any of those that you enjoy, keep in mind that they're only going to be supported and kept alive by your contributions and also sponsorship as well. So we hope to be able to keep those team-specific live streams going, covering Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, and Nebraska. But again, it's dependent on sponsorship and contributions from you. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. It's Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. What's going on?
Hey, Mark. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And forgive me, I'm going to ask you a question, and I just tuned in, so maybe you've answered this. But is it really true that Coach Meyer is going to go to Texas?
Where did he see that?
I actually saw it. It was a Longhorn gentleman on YouTube who was saying, like, the big money donors are kind of for it and things of that nature.
Well, nobody knows that answer aside from him personally and maybe his closest family members. I can't. That's not being reported by a major news agency that knows that it's in the works. And, you know, I was just online minutes ago, and that's not being reported. It's being speculated about, but that's been the case for a couple of years.
Well, let's just say hypothetically, Mark, he goes.
Okay.
Does he take Coach Mick? And who's the recruiting guru? Is it Pantoni? Would he take those guys from the Buckeyes?
Well, again, he's going to take the people that he's most comfortable and familiar with and trusts. So I would think that that he would make offers to the people that he's worked with, specifically at Ohio State. I don't know that in his travels, both as a broadcaster and just in the coaching profession, that he has his eyes on some other people as well that he would like to work with.
You know, I really like Coach Meyer, and I wish him all the best. I hope he's healthy. And anyways, Mark, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Well, I appreciate the phone call. Wish I had some further insight, but I don't know that anybody can answer your question. That's Urban Meyer based on, he, of course, can have any job in the country he wants, aside from maybe two. He can have any job he wants in the country. We don't know what the status of his health is and his family situation. And we don't know if he necessarily, I don't know if you saw our Ohio State live stream, and we addressed, you may want to go, and we had a pretty lengthy conversation about Urban Meyer going to Texas, and none of the panel thought that was likely.
Yes. All right. Well, again, Mark, it was a pleasure talking to you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. I will always take a God bless you. Absolutely. All right. We got Dominic, Michael, Cheryl, although Dominic had to go to bed. Michael, Cheryl on the line. David, good to see you as well. Roger, SEC dog, did not get the notification. I don't know what the deal is with the notifications. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
The voice of college football, Mr. Mark Rogers. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Hi, David. I'm good.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Got a chance to listen to the Buckeye show today, as always.
Good.
And got a couple of points I'd like to make, if you don't mind.
Of course.
They were talking a little bit about Joe Burrow in the cast, and I know that Kevin Noon had kind of alluded to the fact about, Burrow not being, the Joe Burrow at Ohio State that obviously he would become at LSU. And he had made the point that, LSU offered him, they certainly had the coaching there with Emzinger, and they had the coaching with Joe Brady, and he also mentioned the outstanding wide receivers that they had. I believe was the things that he mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That sounds right.
Okay. What I would say is, at Ohio State, he would have had Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson, who I think are pretty good, sharp offensive minds.
Mm-hmm.
His wide receivers would have been Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson, who aren't half bad last time I checked. And he would have had a pretty good running back in J.K. Dobbins to hand the football off to. So, tell me where I'm going wrong, that Joe Burrow might have been able to have some success at Ohio State.
Well, so basically Joe Burrow's final season, of course, was 2019. Let's say he would have quarterbacked Ohio State his sophomore through senior seasons. That would be 2017, 18, and 19. Sure.
Well, Mark, I would contend with that. I don't think he would have quarterbacked over J.T. Barrett in 17. The year that he would have taken over probably would have been 18 and 19.
Well, I'm just saying he could have been the quarterback as a sophomore. I wasn't matching up. I wasn't matching up competition there. Just basically stating that. So, it's my understanding that Joe Burrow had a wide open shot along with everybody else in a fair quarterback competition his final season, but he got hurt.
Right. And I think that I'll make a couple points. First of all, I think if the injury hurt him, and I think once Dwayne Haskins came in and won the Michigan game for J.T. Barrett in 2017, I think the writing was on the wall at that point. Once the coaches saw how he performed under fire and bringing them back to win that game, and I honestly feel I don't know if Ohio State wins that game in 2017 if JT Barrett doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And Haskins doesn't come in and play as great as he did for pretty much the entire second half, because he made some throws that, let's be perfectly honest, Mark, that JT Barrett couldn't have made.
Sure.
And I think that now, if you go to the spring ball, the competition, they will tell you, it wasn't like Joe Burrow looked awful in the spring of 2018. He actually looked pretty good. Now, do I think that he could have thrown 50 touchdown passes in 2018? I get where you're coming from, but I think Ohio State, with the talent they had around them, specifically offensively, as I mentioned, and good offensive coaching, I think Ohio State could have won a lot of games with Joe Burrow, and especially if he would have stayed to his senior year in 2019 with the roster that we had last year, especially, which that roster was loaded. So I think a lot of quarterbacks could have won with that team, with the defense, the running game, and really good receivers. So I'm just alluding to the fact that I think he could have done some really, really good things at Ohio State. I mean, do you think I'm too far off base on that, or what do you think?
Well, no, I don't think you're off base. I also don't want to speak for Kevin, but I think where he was going was that we saw Joe Burrow win a national championship, a Heisman Trophy, and throw 60 touchdown passes. And so automatically a lot of Ohio State fans just think, wow, did they screw up? Why was this guy not starting at Ohio State? Whereas the Joe Burrow that competed for the job in 2017 and more so in the spring of 2018, a year and 3 months, 15, 16 months prior to winning the job and being on campus at LSU, we don't know. We're not on the practice field and in the facility to know, because different players grow at different stages of their career, but wasn't necessarily the same player to make it obvious. What would it have been a year and a half earlier or later that he was who he was.
Yeah, and I get your point. I was just trying to illustrate that I think that the components would have been in place for him to succeed at Ohio State. And I think especially like if he would have stayed at a senior year. Now, bottom line, I think it worked out for the Buckeyes because we got one of the best years ever out of Dwayne Haskins. And, Haskins moving on allowed us to have now 2 years out of Justin Fields. So it might not have worked out to where we could have kept Haskins or had Justin Fields for 2 years. So, in many ways it worked out pretty well for us as well. So I can't get too, difficult about that. My only thing is I think he could have been pretty successful here if it would have worked out. That's all I'm saying.
Well, sure. Based on what he did in 2 years at LSU, I think it's difficult to debate that had he stayed, and because of similar resources, both from a coaching and from a receiver standpoint, why would he not have turned in something similar to what he did there? Right.
The other point to get to, Mark, was the Urban Meyer thing that you guys were commenting on. Not in as much as, although I could comment a little bit on the Texas thing, but as far as the one person had mentioned about kind of nitpicking the Urban Meyer years, and I know you've touched upon this in the past. I'm one of those that doesn't nitpick it too heavily. I mean, I think that, for the most part, I think his first 2 years he won. The first 2 years, I think he kind of took advantage of a weak Big Ten, to be fair. Like in the first 24 games they won, if you go back and look at it, they did not beat a lot of great football teams in those first 24 games. And the Big Ten in 2012 and 2013 would not be quite as strong of a conference as it was, let's say, 2015, 16, and 17. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Okay. The thing that I would say is the loss to Sparty, as I mentioned in 13, wasn't extremely disappointing, just for the simple fact that that was probably D'Antonio's best team. And even if they'd have won that game, I don't know if they'd have been able to beat Florida State for the national championship in 2013, especially with a defense that was very, very questionable. And I still don't know why that defense was disappointing with all of its NFL talent. Obviously, 14, they win the national title. The real disappointing year for me was what we talked about, was just the loss to Sparty in 2015. we talked about that before, with that team, with all of its talent, and basically returning a national championship team, should have been in the playoff. Now, do I know that they would have won it? I mean, Alabama and Clemson were really good, so I don't know if we could have beaten them, but it would have just been nice to have had the opportunity. And they were clearly better than that Sparty team, as we talked about in the past in 2015. But I think the subsequent years, I think 16, as I mentioned to you before, I did not expect that team to be a playoff team that year. I think they overachieved a little bit. And even 17 and 18, I think those teams were really good, but I don't think that those were necessarily national championship teams because they had some flaws, particularly the 18 team because the defense wasn't very good. I would say this, Mark. I find it interesting. His last 2 years were somewhat similar to Tressel's last 2 years when you think about it, Mark, because Tressel had a 2-loss team that beat Oregon and won the Rose Bowl in 2009. Meyer had a 2-loss team that won the Cotton Bowl in 17, and then Tressel had a 1-loss team in 2010 that won the Sugar Bowl, and then Meyer had a 1-loss team that won the Rose Bowl in 18. So some similarities there. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, there are. Of course, without the playoff, it doesn't look the same, but there's certainly similarities there from the standpoint of the bowl status and the record. I just think that him taking advantage of a weak Big Ten was exactly, of course, what we would want him to do as Ohio State fans, is take advantage of a weak Big Ten. I think that the 2013 loss to Michigan State is highly disappointing. Not that I think that they would have beaten Florida State, but I don't think that they were incapable of competing with Florida State. I think that even though, like, for example, when that Florida State team is brought up by my Florida State guests, media contributors, they talk about it like they're the 1978 Pittsburgh Steelers or the 85 Bears. And my goodness, I don't know that they certainly faced by far the best team that they saw the entire season in the championship game. They beat Duke in the ACC championship game. They just didn't play anyone the whole year. And certainly they were extremely good, but I would have liked to have seen Ohio State get a shot in the BCS championship game rather than going to an Orange Bowl game. And especially considering that I have a lot of faith in Urban Meyer preparing a team for a postseason game. But they would have been a, I don't want to say a substantial underdog, but they would have been a decided underdog. I don't know, by 7 to 10 points or something. But they could have won, just like Auburn should have won the game. The 16 team, it could be argued, is the worst. It could be argued, I'm not saying that it is for sure, without a doubt, but it could be argued is the worst Urban Meyer team, and they got a playoff bid. The next two teams, I'm not going to argue, to be clear, and I didn't at the time, that they should have definitely been in the playoff, but I felt as though their resume was just as good as the 4th seed in the playoff, both times. Yeah, the way they were playing on defense throughout most of 2018, you wouldn't think that they would have had much of a shot in the playoff, but they were playing better on that side of the ball late in the season, the last few games.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. One thing I'll say about the 2018 defense, Mark, just one quick point. I always wonder what that defense would have looked like. And I know it had its struggles even when he was healthy, but if Nick Bosa wouldn't have gotten hurt, I think the 28, because I would have liked to have seen Chase Young and Nick Bosa play together for an entire season. I think that would have been that'd have been pretty fun to watch.
No doubt.
They'd have been pretty impressive. One other point, Mark, I was going to make real quick too was I threw out the scenario. I think you guys kind of touched upon it as far as a playoff scenario. I had mentioned if Florida beats Alabama, and let's say Notre Dame loses a heartbreaker to Clemson on a last-second field goal, and then Ohio State's a 6-0 team, but without a Big Ten championship, let's say. Is that a scenario where they could be on the outside looking in, and your thoughts on that?
Well, I will answer that the way I answer any question concerning the College Football Playoff Committee. I'm not on the committee, so I can only conjecture, as anybody
I
else
know.
does, about what they think. What I think is that they've already placed Ohio State in the 4th position in the country. So, you're looking at a situation in which they're going to elevate a 6th-ranked Florida team into the playoff, which, of course, beating number 1, the consensus number 1 team, holds a huge amount of weight. But on the same weekend, Ohio State would be playing a team that's probably going to be ranked in the top 12 or 15 in the country. So I would hope that they would steer away from, and they've said this in the past, that while they originally valued conference championships and made a big deal the first year, of course, about conference championships, since then, it's only been kind of an extra data point and some type of a tiebreaker where they have just said, hey, we're just looking for the 4 best teams. But
Right.
I just, in the spirit of competition and the reason we have regionalization in conferences, I would not want to see 2 teams doubled up from 2 conferences, and that's what we're going to, field for the playoff.
Yeah. I would say, I just think, bottom line, if Florida beats Alabama, both teams are getting in for sure. And then, it would depend on how they would look at, like, Notre Dame, again, if they can play toe-to-toe with Clemson, and it's, like I said, a heartbreaker, a last-second field goal, Clemson beats them, and Clemson's fully healthy when they play them. They've got some of those defensive guys back, and obviously they'll have Lawrence back, let's say. Then, it'll just be interesting to see how the committee views that. And then also, if they don't change that rule, by the way, I have a feeling that Michigan waving the white flag and not playing that last game is a distinct possibility. So if we just get the 5 games in with Sparty this week and then get resided to having to play that 2 versus 2 game in the round robin, Mark, I just wonder how they'll look at that. I really do. I think that creates one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting scenario, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Sure it does. Ohio State's going to hope that Wisconsin looks very impressive in all of its other games.
Yeah, it's interesting to see as it unfolds, Mark. All right, as always, good stuff, my friend. You going to run the live stream later in the week, or are you running it through the rest of the week?
Absolutely. We're here.
All right, my friend. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
All right. Yes, the playoff scenarios. And, we've almost arrived at the place once we get to this, of course, get to the conclusion of the season, in which I will then don my professor jacket, and then we will really dive into all these issues concerning the college football playoff and the scheduling and the conference alignment and what does and does not make sense and how it can be changed and fixed. All right. I think we have hit the end of the line. I appreciate everybody that's jumped on tonight. Thank you so much. P. Digits, John Velez as well. Lewis, thank you. Good to see you here. And we will see everybody back here on a Thursday at 6. So tomorrow's Thursday at 6 Eastern, 5 o'clock Central Time for Nebraska Live. And then we will go right into our live call-in show tomorrow night, Thursday night, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Shoot. I made mention of this during, I believe, the Miami show last night, that I made a comparison to some of the media studies that I've seen about promotion time, and I really need to increase the promotion time given to Mark Rogers TV, certainly. So we'll do it right here. It's no surprise that more people are spending their time on their phones and on social media more than ever before due to COVID, and they were before even COVID. Many small businesses were caught off guard and now scrambling to generate enough sales and traffic to stay open. 2.6 million people, 6 billion people, 2.6 billion with a B, people are on Facebook. But the kind folks at Verma Digital are focusing all their efforts for the next year on working with small businesses and helping you and your small business generate traffic to your online space. So they can do that through Facebook ads, Google AdWords, or social media content, or through their services of a full-fledged marketing agency. Verma Digital promises to work hand in hand with you to bring the attention of your business to where the eyes are. These people know what they're doing. I've had several conversations with them concerning what they can do for me, and they've helped me considerably already. Don't let your competitors pass you by. Go to vermadigital.com. That's vermadigital.com. Let me pull it up right here. Bam, there it is. Small business owner. Make the smart move with vermadigital.com. Schedule your free consultation. Mention my name. That would be Mark with a K, M-A-R-K. Mention my name, and you automatically qualify for 10% off all services. Verma Digital. If you want to make some money, put yourself in a great position, you, your business, whatever venture you have going online, get a hold of them. At least talk to them. It's a free consultation. There you go. I'm impressed. Therefore, I'm sponsoring them. All right. And again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you love what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, we will continue these shows based on your contributions and based on sponsorships. So hopefully we can make some headway in those areas here soon. And you can join us on Patreon. Please join us on Patreon for 15 cents a day for an insider look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You get my predictions. You get the pick of the week from Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. You also get exclusive live streams per request, and also watch parties that we've had a few this season already. All right, everyone. Let me take another look at the live chat, see what we've got. And David, can't wait to talk to you soon, my friend. We will do that. All right. Michael, I mean Notre Dame beats Clemson. Who will fill the last two spots? Notre Dame beats Clemson. It depends on what else is happening throughout the country. You can never ask a question in a silo. All right. Great to see you, Cheryl. Thank you so much, everybody. Yes, be blessed, as David is reminding us, and we will see you soon.